啊啊啊啊，我我我我，呃鹅鹅鹅，一一一一，呜呜呜呜，吁吁吁吁。
So let's get into tones. Just have a quick look at these red and yellow arrows in front of you. This is your vocal range. So the red arrows at the top are the highest point in your vocal range whilst still being reasonably comfortable. All right, don't try and go above your range because you'll not only sound silly, it'll also be not very pleasant for you. And the same goes for the lower part of your vocal range as well. Don't go below what you're comfortable with. And the yellow arrows in the middle are just your normal speaking voice. So there are 4 major tones in Chinese, and there's also a 5th tone, but we'll get into why I sort of separated those in just a little bit. Let's talk about first tone first. So we call this one the singing tone, and it's essentially the highest point in your vocal range, again, whilst being comfortable. So mine, for example, would sound something like this. Ma, ma. You know, it's still quite a deep sound. I've got a deep voice, but it's just the way I would say the English word may be, maybe. Maybe. So just try it with me. This is the word for mother or mum. Ma. Ma. I've had a lot of male clients of mine that have found this really hard to produce. And I think it's something to do with the fact that it sounds a little bit feminine maybe. But don't worry about it. I always say to these clients, there's a lot of Chinese people, a lot tougher than you, that use this every day. All right, so don't worry about that. Just belt it out. Ma. Second tone goes from your midpoint, basically your normal speaking voice level, all the way up to first tone level, your highest point in your vocal range. And we call this the unsure tone because it's kind of what it sounds like. So you sort of, the way you would maybe say, are you going? Or just simply, huh? Huh? A lot of people, there's a couple of mistakes people make with this one. They either start too low or they don't say the entire tone. It should sound like this. Ma, 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 straight up. Starts from your normal speaking voice and goes straight up to first tone. Try again. Ma, just like you're saying, huh? So at the same time as not starting too low, you also want to make sure that you finish nice and high up at first tone level. So it's ma, 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 ma. At that same level as first tone. Just remember that. Now with third tone, we're going to spend a little bit of extra time on because this is one that, even though it's not actually the toughest tone by any means, especially in combination with other tones, it's just people are taught wrong. It's just taught badly. And people have a lot of bad habits with this one. Third tone is actually the lowest point in your vocal range. But as you can see from this diagram here, there's 2 types of third tone. The one with the big thick arrow that goes down then up, this is the one that's taught most commonly as the third tone. But actually, it's only used like this. I don't know the exact frequency, but I would guess somewhere in the region of 0.5% of the time. Maybe even less. Now, the dotted line, the little dotted arrow that you see at the bottom, that is what we would call the most common third tone, the real third tone, if you like. Let me just give you a demonstration of these 2. So the one that's taught most commonly, the big down-up one, would sound something like this. Ma, ma, down then up. Ma, slightly down and then way up. So that is the word for horse in Chinese, but let me just show you how this would be pronounced most commonly in real life. Ma, ma, ma. Really low, really short, and kind of croaky. That's why we call this one the zombie tone. So I want you to think of third tone not as a down-up tone, but as a zombie tone. So how are you supposed to know when to pronounce it which way? The full third tone or the sort of zombie tone? Well, you only pronounce it in that full down-up way when it's a single isolated syllable. So if you're just walking around saying horse, horse for some reason, like a crazy person, then maybe you could say ma. But if you're using it in conjunction with any other tone, which is what's going to be the case most of the time, it's going to be just purely that ma, ma, ma. Now the fourth tone, have a careful look at the shape of this arrow here. It's not just a straight line down from first tone level to third tone level. It actually starts slightly above first tone and then goes all the way down to third tone. So this is higher than first tone and then to your lowest point, your third tone level. This is what we call the assertive tone, because it's just like saying no in English. Like if someone asks you to do something you really don't want to do, you can say no. So let's try it with this Chinese word here, which means to scold someone, which is ma. Ma. You notice if I said this slowly, if I slow it down, it would sound something like this. Ma. Yeah, so obviously we're not going to speak that slowly in real Chinese, so we're going to say ma. So you've got to be quite strong with it. The last tone here is the fifth tone. Some people say it's a tone, some people say it's a minor tone, and the other's a major. Or so. We're just going to call it a tone for the sake of argument, okay? So fifth tone is a little bit fluid, it's a little bit tricky, because it can actually, the tone of it can actually change depending on what comes before it. That's why we call it the contrarian tone. Because what it tends to do, just like a contrarian in real life, it just does the opposite or says the opposite of whatever the other person says. So whatever the previous tone does before it, it tends to do the opposite. But one thing that's always common is that it's always very, very short. And it's usually the opposite of the previous tone. So take this one, for example, which is essentially the question mark in Chinese, which we'll get into in the first few lessons. Ma. But that's if the previous one is a low. Previous sound, previous tone is a low tone, it'll go high. Ma. But if the previous tone is a high tone, it'll probably go low. Ma.
Ah, 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 ah. 我、我、鹅、鹅、一、以、意、乌、五、五、物、鱼、语、语、玉。